Welcome to the Cyber Call, the podcast by Ride It Boom for managed service providers looking to stay ahead in an ever-changing world of cybersecurity. Each week, we dive into the latest threats, trends, and real-world strategies to help MSPs protect their clients and grow their businesses. Let's build a safer, stronger community together.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the first Monday of August here on the Cyber Call, and we've got a great one. We are joined with Kelvin, Nick Ross, and Brian Blakely in studio. We are going to be talking, today's episode is about Microsoft's biggest security shift yet. That's what we're titling it. And we'll do some intros momentarily. But before we do, let's talk about a little bit of banter going on as we let people join in, because there's a lot of folks coming as I see the count starting to pick up. I'm going to put two URLs in chat. The first, we're going to talk about two relevant things. Morning and welcome, everybody. Is this one came out today, and it is about a exploit again around, shockingly, Kelvin, around 365.
Oh wow! What a surprise!
Can you believe it? And it's quote unquote a new one. You and I were talking about this offline. We haven't seen this before, but talk to us a little about link wrapping, what they're doing, because it's pretty clever. And
it's very clever. And the thing is, I've never seen it being abused in the way described in the article. I was surprised at it being an actual attack vector these days. So what happens is a lot of scanning software, Proofpoint or Microsoft Defend or these kind of things, rewrite a link to be a safe link. And then there's a little piece of detection inside of emails. If something is already rewritten to be a safe link, it doesn't need to do that again. So if you send someone a already rewritten safe link that has been scanned, then change the contents behind it by changing a URL shortening service or that kind of stuff, you actually forward them to a phishing page. And Microsoft says, or Proofpoint says, hey guys, this page is absolutely legitimate. Which is it's actually a very creative way of approaching this.
Yeah, it really is, Kelvin. Any thoughts on, starting with you, Kelvin? I'll go to Brian, but hey, how might you mitigate something like this other than awareness, Kelvin, that now all of a sudden we've got to look at who's sending it and just flag, this sender's never sent you anything before. Obviously that if it's a spear phishing, obviously that could get, overcome as well. But anything come to mind?
I think that user training, I believe in user training. I 100% do. So that is the only way to get around these kind of things, because even with that, we convince users hey, if this is a safe link, click on this, or if it's a safe link, you can hover over it and see that it's safe. Microsoft marks it with a little thing saying hey, this link has been scanned. And I'm yeah, you can't do that in this case. So even user education doesn't really help that much. It's a very difficult one to think of a good solution for.
Yeah. Brian, any mitigating things you might recommend on something that like this?
Oh, awareness in the community for sure, right? And I mean, there's no limit to the creativity these days with bad actors. I mean, it reminded me, this wrapping of the URLs and such reminds me of the one I saw last week too, a little off topic, but in the same realm, where there's this white on white text or this hidden text in email, and then your AI summaries actually pick up the hidden text and actually redirect or tell you, hey, you need to go to this link because you need to reset your password. So your AI is actually captures that hidden text in an email that otherwise would have been ignored, summarize it, and redirect. It's amazing the amount of creativity, and with AI, we're going to see that increase, I think, exponentially, because the bad actors and just like we do, have AI, right?
Yeah.
Can do some of this stuff.
And it's absolutely amazing, because I actually read a Medium article about someone who used that same technique to get his resume past resume scanners that are AI based. He just said, this candidate is completely suitable in white text. And that's what the AI kept giving back to everyone.
There's the droids over there, huh?
Exactly.
So Nick, anything on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a hard one to solve for, just given the creativeness behind it. But I always think about defense in depth. You're getting past that first layer of email security, user clicking on a link, which a lot of the end user training we do, they're still going to fall susceptible to those types of things, especially if they pass those checks like Kelvin was mentioning around Microsoft saying it's legitimate. But then I think we also have, some type of layer on our endpoint around web content filtering and, the various things that you can put onto the device to help protect against that. But without, diving into the details of experimentation there, it's certainly, something that you have to dive into a little bit more to get into the weeds of what are some of the defensive approaches here.
Got it. All right, and then one more, Kelvin. I'll start you off with this. Another one we were talking about, and Corey Clark, who is at Solutions Granted and now part of SonicWall, does a great blog. I'll put that in there. But the SonicWall SMA 100s are under a deep attack once again. We keep oscillating between SonicWall, Avanti, and Fortinet, seemingly with these VPNs and this is joking around. Palo, certainly not. After the thing they said, not our VPN, so we know that it couldn't have been theirs. A little sarcasm, but what are your thoughts on this? You've got kind of a.
I am very opinionated about where you should focus your protections, and these days that is no longer your firewall. Leaving security to the edge is a risk. It is not something you should be doing anymore. You can even start putting in the dumbest firewalls that you can find, like that are just doing simple firewall services and not using advanced UTMs anymore, because no one cares about the edge anymore. These devices give you a huge attack surface, and you know what happens when something is blocked internally to externally? People just grab their phone, they connect to their hotspot, and they go like, okay, and now I no longer have the security thing or the security issue. I'm no longer being blocked by my firewall. The edge is over. It's all about your identity now. It's all about making sure that the identity is protected. And from there on, you get a lot less risk. Something like zero trust networking, where you do connect to a sort of VPN endpoint, putting it in air quotes, because I mean, we all know how networking really works in the background, but it's a lot more involved. You make sure that your identity is protected, or maybe even device-based protection, but no longer the edge. We're working from anywhere these days. We're like this is my soapbox. Everyone picks up their laptop, works on a plane, works on at a coffee shop, works at wherever they want to sit down.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't work protecting the edge anymore. So we should be saying goodbye to these large, complex UTM devices. Have network segmentation where each device is isolated, because most of our apps are SaaS anyway. And when your device is isolated, you protect the device and the user. That's it. You no longer need to worry about the attack surface on your firewall.
Yeah. Brian, any quick takeaways on this for you?
Yeah, it's just the perimeters, the end user's fingertips, right? We talked about this in the virtual green room, and moving to getting past the buzzwords of zero trust, right? Implementing real zero trust and all the goodies that go with that. It's not the black box you put on your network, right? It's more of this philosophical laundry list of things that you employ. But I do think you see SSL VPN being deprecated everywhere, and Fortinet recently moved from it. So hopefully it moves more towards zero trust, and perfect topic as we get into some of the stuff that we're talking about today.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, speaking of zero trust, we are going to have, let me do a shameless plug for Red Bull 26, the number one rated session this year. And I thought Miller's on as one of the advisory council, the number one rated session. And we had them create the sessions, and the MSPs voted on. And Brian was Jason Garbus, who actually wrote the book Zero Trust, is doing both a workshop and a main stage session. He is part of Cloud Security Alliance. He leads their division of Zero Trust networking. And last but not least, was one of the originals of architecting AppGate, which is used by most of the DoD. So, we're we're excited to have him present and do a workshop. And Nick, closing it off, any comments on this from you?
Yeah, I think the only thing, we think about new age solutions, beyond a VPN, if you need to funnel traffic somewhere or, want to have private traffic, there's newer solutions like global secure access that, provide a more remote first way of starting to think about that. Definitely agree with Kelvin and Brian in the sense of the user and device being the attack surface that you really need to lock down first. But certainly, there's a lot more solutions that you can start to look at that are more SASE, ZTNA based that can help, get away from some of this, even the third party risk using Microsoft solutions too.
Yeah. All right. Let me set the stage, do intros, and let's go, Brian. All right. So big article last week. Of course, Kelvin had the inside and probably Nick did too as Microsoft MVPs. But, three big shifts happening that we wanted to talk in the ecosystem. First, this token protection coming in P1. We're going to spend some time right out of the gate talking to Kelvin about that. GDAP, one of our favorite subjects, Kelvin, right? Because everybody knows all about that. And
everybody understands GDAP entirely. No one has any questions.
And then the third being you coming out. When I say you, CIPP now, 85 to 9,000 MSPs.
I think we broke 9,000. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Not using your open source platform. And big news, you're going to actually have a credential that for administrators, you're going to be opening that up again at Right of Boom this year for people that are going to go down that credentialing path.
Yep.
So those are our three big topics. So with that, let's do some very quick intros. And Brian, I'll kick it over to you. So Kelvin, welcome as our guest. Tell us a little about yourself. We'll go to Brian and then Nick.
Awesome. Well, Kelvin Tegelaar, I own a MSP in the Netherlands, a fairly large one, growing rapidly still. Lots of fun running an MSP. So much fun that I decided to start a second business on the side called CIPP.
Because you weren't busy enough.
Because I wasn't busy enough.
Yeah.
Running an MSP is too easy. I have I run my MSP, but I also have a second business called CyberDrain. CyberDrain created a product called CIPP, CyberDrain Improved Partner Portal, which is a M365 multi-tenant management tool. Still quite a mouthful. What it does, it helps you manage M365 for MSPs. Like you just said, we have about 9,000 users using or MSPs using it today. Around 2.7, 2.6 million tenants in total that we manage, which is an absolute insane number. And it's lots of fun because we have a very small team and we're very community-based to make sure that we embody everything that an MSP needs. That's important for CyberDrain.
Yeah, and doing good stuff because it's open source.
Absolutely. Yeah. Entirely free. There's a hosted component, but it is entirely free.
Yeah, you have an upgrade, and you can certainly plug that later on. Brian, thanks for joining, being a co-host often, being a contributor very often. Thanks. For those that may not know you, quick pitch of who you are, my friend.
Well, just Chief Risk Officer, Compliance Strategist at Compliance Scorecard. So, Andrew, excited to co-host today's hot topic with Kelvin. Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. And for those who don't know, Brian, 3 decades in this space, InfoSec, vCISO, CISO, multiple MSP exits. So he sat in your shoes and knows exactly what you're doing. All right, Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm the CEO of Cloud Capsule, which is an automated security assessment tool for Microsoft 365. Most of you, or some of you, may more know me from my YouTube channel, which is T-minus 365, which is all about Microsoft and SMB. A lot of inspiration was from watching Kelvin over the years, and get my Microsoft MVP from his nomination as well. Anytime MVP, but I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Good to have you, Nick. Thanks for co-hosting. All right, Mr. Blakely, over to you to kick it off for today.
All right, I'm new to the co-host thing. I've been contributor a lot in Kelvin's hot seat, but this will be new to me, so excited to be part of it. But Kelvin, before we dive into Microsoft's big announcement right on token protection, I think we probably want to zoom out a bit because there's been a real surge in like phishing as a service platforms, or really MFA bypass as a service lately. And it feels like they're getting more sophisticated, more accessible, and more damaging really by the hour, by the day. Okay, so I've been hearing a lot about reverse proxy and man in the middle type of attacks using platforms like Tycoon and Evil Proxy is another one I think of. And they're not just bypassing MFA, they're weaponizing it, right? So can you walk us through, Kelvin, what's going on in this space? What's driving this explosion and this phishing as a service, and why platforms like Tycoon, 2FA are proven to be such a big threat right now, especially for MSPs and the clients we're all trying to protect?
It's because, and I say this as an MSP myself, it's because MSPs are idiots. In reality, looking at what the things that we're supposed to do to prevent multi-factor bypass is something that we were supposed to do 10 years ago already. And that is have users educated about what is phishing and what is not phishing. Because if you have that part under control, then you don't need to worry about your MFA token being stolen or your credentials being stolen or these kind of things. But for the longest time, we as MSPs either haven't believed enough in education, or we haven't trained our end users enough to recognize phishing. And this increase isn't just because users are falling for it easier, but also because there's a lot more tooling available for these phishing toolkits. One of them right now completely generates exact copies of emails using AI. They simply use a form of ChatGPT or Gemini or all of these kind of things to create a perfect copy without any broken links or broken images. Because normally we tell our users, hey, you can recognize it. The image is broken or the link is incorrect. And then suddenly there's this perfect email with just one button, the CTA, that is clickable and is a phishing link. It's getting too good. Our users won't be able to recognize it anymore without proper education. And because of that's why we're seeing more of an influx of people falling for it. It's not that there's more available. It's just that the phishing is getting so much better that people are falling for it more.
Yeah, Brian, if I could just ask Kelvin. Kelvin, I read a recent article, and I'll put it in as well, that the phishing as a service ecosystem is becoming so efficient, and it's allowing the entrance barrier is a, you're talking a few $100s a month. They obviously can scale up depending on the sophistication that you want to use, but how relevant is the ecosystem of actors to the growth of this, their capabilities of being very efficient, scaling, etc.
As with all sufficiently mature technology, scaling becomes easier and easier over time when more people have control over that specific piece of technology. There's more available out there. There are more toolkits, fish kits available these days, and eventually it just goes down to the lowest bidder, and it's a race to the bottom for them as well. Just as it is for MSP services these days. Like some MSP services are also a race to the bottom because everyone is offering them cheaper and cheaper because it's commoditized. Phishing is commoditized, which is an insane thing, because talking about cybersecurity threat actors being a commodity or using tools that are a commodity, criminals using a commodity, that sounds weird.
Yeah. Back over to you, Brian.
Yeah, before the next question too, is just one observation too, is the maturity of some of these things as a service too. I mean, you go there, the barrier to entry, like Andrew said, is low, but there's also support. I mean, they actually provide support on using these MFA bypass as a service, right? Hey, I'm using your service or tool and I'm having problems, and that will actually help you and support you through the process. So it's just, it's nuts out there. All right, Kelvin. So let's get into the big Microsoft announcement, all right? Token protection, which is now available in Intra IDP 1. So that's a shift I think a lot of MSPs weren't expecting. So Kelvin, can you break down or add some detail for what exactly is, I guess, Token Protection 101? what's new with this rollout to the P1 licenses, and why is this really such a game changer for MSPs and their client? I mean, what makes this specific move such a big deal by Microsoft?
Yeah, so there's actually a couple of so to make sure that everyone understands exactly why this is a big deal, let's take one very quick step back, and I'll try to keep it short, but so that everyone understands what we're talking about. The token is the token that we're talking about in this case is the login token generated by Microsoft, which allows you to use their services. When you log in, using your username, password, and MFA credentials, a token is generated, and that token is a text representation of your valid login. And what hackers could do previously, before token protection existed, was we could take any bad actor or anyone that does this could take that specific token and reuse it at any location that they wanted, as long as it was in the validity, which is an hour by default or 90 days if they stole your refresh token. That allows you to very easily abuse someone's mailbox, or if you have an admin account, abuse their entire tenant. It is a very easy method to do that. Microsoft came up with this idea to make sure that your token would be protected in some cases. And token protection quite simply works by checking, is the IP address of the person or the device of this person still the same device or IP address accessing the service? If not, I will deny access. And that used to be just a P2 solution, a Entra ID P2. And I know, but I might be speaking for myself here, but not a lot of MSPs, I believe, use Entra ID P2. P1 is much more commonplace, as it's included in Business Premium, the SKU that most MSPs use. So there is it is a new feature that Microsoft has leveled down to make available for everyone. It was already available for about a year in general.
Okay.
Yeah, Kelvin, I guess we have a lot of technical folks out there, kind of how's the sausage made kind of thing. And do you mind maybe going one layer deeper into token protection, I guess, from more of a technical perspective? How does it actually prevent the token replay or session hijacking? You mentioned some of the IP checking and some of that, but really under the hood, how does that work?
So under the hood, it's like when we go super nerdy, it's really exciting. Microsoft says that you create a conditional access policy that targets your Entra ID joined or registered devices. When a device is registered, you get something called a BPRT, a bulk primary refresh token on your device. That bulk primary refresh token is able to generate more access tokens. Every time you access a service, for example, you go to the Microsoft portal, or you open your Outlook, or you open Teams, it uses this long-lived token to generate a 1-hour access token. Now, these 1-hour access tokens, normally speaking, you can use them everywhere you want. Like I said, you can copy and paste them. They're just a text representation, so they're just a really long string. You could copy and paste them to a machine in America, even making it look like, so I'm in Europe, I copied it to a machine in America. In my logs, it looks like I am accessing the service from my local machine, because that is the IP address located in the token. So that's a little bit weird, right? So Microsoft figured, with this new protection, what we're going to do is each token is going to have extra metadata assigned to it. Each BPRT generated token gets a little piece of information about location, about which device it was generated from, which IP address it was generated from. I think they store some other like secondary information, like which type of MFA was used to generate this token. Like, was it anti-phishing resistant MFA or not? These kind of things. And all that metadata is included in the access token. So now what Microsoft does, instead of just saying like, hey, you have a valid access token, that's okay. They go like, okay, you have a valid access token, But let me actually zoom in on the contents of that token and say, are you in the right location? Are you on the right device? Does all the metadata of your device match the metadata that you've sent me? And if it doesn't, then the token is invalid, and it simply gives you a pop-up saying like, "Hey, you're not allowed to log in here." So from the engineer side, like a deep dive on it, it's super nerdy. They simply added a lot of data into something that was already in an existing token.
Kelvin, isn't Deja Phoenix kind of alluded to this? Isn't it like whether it's Hulu or he's saying Activation Blizzard, they're getting smarter because they don't want you to say, "Hey, Kelvin, you can use my account. You and I are buds. I'll sign up. You can use it. Nick, you can use it." It's that type of technology to make it really layman's terms, is it?
Yeah, exactly. But in a way that doesn't immediately bother the user, because if you would enable a VPN, some of the metadata is still valid. It's still a valid device. It's still registered. So you don't want to log out the user when something like that happens. So there's a lot of logic applied to that to make sure that only when a specific amount of the triggers have been triggered, it invalidates the token.
Right. Good.
Got it. All right. Thanks for that, Kelvin. That kind of nerdy deep dive and under the hood look. I actually had a second part to that question. I think it's probably on a lot of people's mind, but why do you think Microsoft made the call to release this now and include it in P1? I mean, do you feel like there's a bigger strategy at play here?
Absolutely. So I actually spoke to the person that at the identity team that created this technology, and they wanted to make this available for people from the very start after preview. But MSPs kind of shot themselves in the foot, or at least the SMB did. Not even MSPs, just the SMB in general, which is a much bigger market. We publicly say we don't want to be tested. We don't want to be guinea pigs. We don't want Microsoft to test things on us. We don't want to be forced to use beta software or these kind of things. And because of all of those statements, Microsoft thought, "Oh, we can't keep developing these technologies and letting it letting it out in the world. So we'll now start testing it in controlled environments that we know how they work, the enterprises, because Microsoft will always be an enterprise-focused company. They made it available to them with the idea of, this was always going to be a feature that should be available to the bigger public. And only now they've been able to make it available to P1 because now they're finally done with all the testing and perfecting it. So that is... it's kind of our own fault. We sometimes as SMBs are a little loud saying, we don't want to be tested on, like Windows tests or Windows preview updates are always terrible. And we kind of shot ourselves in the foot there because we could have had this technology available much sooner.
Yeah, and Kelvin, with this available now, one thing I've been thinking about is with token protection included in P1, do you think this will start to level the playing field a little bit? I mean, for smaller MSPs who really couldn't justify or afford that jump to P2, do you see this as kind of a real opportunity to close some of the security gaps without blowing up the budget, so to speak?
Absolutely. Even more, any MSP that is on the cyber call listening today, if you do not enable token protection for your clients, even if you say like, okay, I'm going to do a phased rollout and I'm going to take it easy and make sure that everyone gets it in a year. But I'm telling you, if you're not doing it right now, you're being negligent. It is a 100% certainty that you are protecting your users with this. It stops token replay attacks dead in its tracks. It just stops them. The same as using phishing resistant MFA. It's the same thing. If you're not doing it today, then please start doing it. Please implement it as an MSP because your users should be having P1. You should have business premium.
Kelvin, can this be done at scale with a CIPP, with different tools?
Yes, absolutely. With CIPP or with PowerShell or even using Microsoft's own conditional access import functionality. You can do this everywhere. And it makes it so much easier to do this at scale, especially once you've implemented it one of your clients. You just send them out a couple of emails saying, like, this is going to change. This is what you're going to notice. And from then on, you are able to easily implement this anywhere. I saw some questions coming in from the chat. Number one was, do you need a P1 license for every user using this? Yes, absolutely. The same as conditional access. And please be aware that Microsoft is now auditing on this actively. And they're sending out emails saying, like, hey, if you don't have a P1 license for all your users, but you're using conditional access, they will shut off your tenant's access. They do not accept license cheating as a whole. Another question was, doesn't token protection only run on Windows? Currently, yes.
Got it. And then Jason says, is there a way to monitor results when token protection is enabled?
Yes, absolutely. It actually is logged in the audit logs immediately when token protection is triggered. And it's very easy to alert on that using Sentinel, using CIPP, or using any graph tool that's able to read the logs.
Kelvin, speaking of logs, and Brian, I'll turn it back over to you. Just real quick, if you recall, it was about a year ago, Kelvin, maybe more, but something about a year ago, the Microsoft themselves were attacked. It was, I forget, it was Storm followed by 4 letters. It was one of the big, nation state threat actors. Yes. And they said, we will enable logging for, business edition. And it'll be out there within X days. It was out there, and I remember you and I talking about it, but they didn't, quote unquote, make an announcement. Where do we stand these days with, your premium licensing, your basic licensing, not E5? What do we get? What don't we get?
In regards to audit logging these days, after that little bit of hassle, Microsoft made some changes in what mailbox auditing events were available. You pretty much get everything. You in Business Premium, there are no more hard limitations in the data that you receive. However, the time that it's stored is still limited. I believe the current maximum is 90 days, upgradable to 120 for Business Premium, and a year if you have an E5 license. I'm not exactly sure about that. I'd have to check it. All these numbers there.
Yeah.
I try to store them all in my head, but it's not always possible.
No, but that's really helpful. So, and Brian, over to you, man.
Well, just and knowing Microsoft, everything Kelvin said is subject to name changes and shuffles.
Yes, absolutely.
As we speak, maybe. Nick, I think are you up?
You got them all done for you, Brian? You're 4 there.
Yeah, I believe so. I think Nick's up.
All right, Nick, over to you.
Yeah, so I think we're going to shift into talking a little bit of GDAP. And certainly, Kelvin, I think, one of the things I recall early days of GDAP when it first came out is I was working with the Lighthouse team at Microsoft and also talking to you as well, too. And I think you got some pretty good domain expertise with GDAP, but I think you maybe have some figures behind the number of users leveraging GDAP. What are those these days, do you think?
It's okay. So everyone was force migrated by Microsoft, so everyone's using GDAP. But there are still a lot of people using what's called the MLT GDAPs, which are Microsoft-led transition, which actually just give you a much lower level of access than what you used to have. And a lot of people are still complaining about that. You see Reddit topics once in a while popping up saying like, hey, I can't edit this Exchange property. Yeah, that's because you haven't set up GDAP yourself and you allowed Microsoft to migrate you. I don't have the exact numbers anymore. I know that CIPP and Cyberdrain helped migrate like 60% or 70% of all GDAP migrations in the world, which was an absolutely insane number. But because of that, I always consider myself a little lucky that I got to be that close to the GDAP teams because of all of these migrations and that kind of stuff. So I'm able to get a bit more of a look inside of the kitchen than other people.
Yeah. No, I love that. And working with their team, they certainly built some tooling there. But, a lot of people adopted CIPP just because it was a lot more straightforward to understand and deploy. But if we zoom out on that, just to kind of look back and kind of just more so look at the top level, talk to us, what is GDAP? And, do you feel like MSPs are still trying to adapt to GDAP today versus, years ago when this first came out?
And Kelvin, would you also, when we sat down at Flow, you mentioned there's different types, right? There, one with the CSP, one with the actual tenant, and
everyone's confused. Yeah.
Can you demystify a little here?
Yeah. So, taking a step back, GDAP is Granular Delegated Access Permissions, and Granular Delegated Access Permissions. This is terrible. Allows you to access the tenants that you manage using the Microsoft set roles. So instead of saying, hey, you are a global administrator, as you used to be with DAP, or close to global administrator, as you used to be with DAP, you can now select the roles yourself that you have access under. But your GDAP relationship is your own. It doesn't mean that if your vendor, for example, your CSP, let's say PAX8 or ShareWeb or all the others, if they set up GDAP, that is for their access. That does not give you a way into that client's tenant. You have to set up your own relationship for that. Microsoft also made a big change there, where it used to be the case that anyone that had a one-time access link, sent you a one-time access link, had access to your tenant forever using delegated access permissions. That's how it used to be. Now, there is a maximum term on the GDAP relationship. And if you include global administrator, that term decreases. So they are really trying to prevent you from having global administrator access into specific tenants. They also allow you only to auto-renew if you don't have highly privileged roles. That is to prevent you as the MSP from having highly privileged standing access over long periods of time. With DAP, I used to be able to connect to all of my clients' tenants in one go and list all of their mailboxes, which, when you think of it, is kind of insane, because I'm pretty sure most of my clients never gave us permissions for that. But with GDAP, the client explicitly accepts a link, and in that link are the specific roles, and they get to see what access does my client or does my MSP get. They get stuff like, they can view all mailboxes. They can look at all contents of my SharePoint site. And that makes it a bit more of a trust relationship between you and your client as well, because the client themselves gives you the permissions that you are requesting. And they're also set in stone. Sorry, Andy.
Kelvin, even though it says that if you wanted to really, cover your what, would you state something in your MSA that, as acknowledged, when it comes to managing Microsoft, you're agreeing to said terms of GDAP, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that, did that extra layer in your actual agreements, would you do that?
Yeah, we actually have a part in our MSA saying like, hey, we request a GDAP relationship with specific roles, ask for the addendum on what specific roles we request, and then that way we get ourselves covered. The cool thing about GDAP is that it's also no longer like that. Someone clicks a link and it's accepted for once. It actually means that it's a contract with your client, and there's no more changes after you create the GDAP relationship. So do you want an extra role? You actually have to send them a new link, and they have to actually accept that new role. You can't just give yourself more privileges anymore.
So unpack that, Kelvin. You win a new, you guys are growing leaps and bounds. You win a new 75 employee deal. They've got a relationship with another MSP. How does that work then?
That relationship is locked in place, and they will have that access. The client's able to revoke the access, and we have to request a new relationship. So between our tenant and theirs, it's no longer a relationship that people are able to use like the previous CSP DAP relationship. The previous CSP DAP relationship, your MSP was able to use and your CSP was able to use. Now that's all separated, allowing much more granularity.
But an important piece of onboarding, no? That as you have an outgoing MSP, you really need to make sure.
You need to make sure to remove their access, yes.
and probably a good, at least setting the stage, even all the way in the sales process, that here are some of the things and changes that you're going to be responsible, almost like shared responsibility. This is what you're going to need to do, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right, Nick.
Yeah, and I think, Kelvin, I see a lot of MSPs kind of getting tripped up, obviously, with various different factors here. But one of the things I've seen most prevalently is it is complex to understand. And in some cases, you set up these relationships, you add these permissions, and then your technicians go in and they don't have access to something that they need to go do. And so they get frustrated. And what they end up doing is add every single permission and almost resemble back to what we had with GDAP, which is global administrator, full control over everything. And it kind of defeats the purpose of GDAP and the security that we're trying to put into place. Just curious, what are you seeing in the sense of, what mind shifts you need to make, when thinking about GDAP, but also where you see a lot of people still getting tripped up?
Yeah, so the second one, the second part of the question is the one I see most of all. It's people getting tripped up, just going like, okay, you know what? I see 88 roles available. Let me add all of them. And then they click next, and then suddenly they're like, hey, wait, nothing's working anymore. And it was actually quite surprising to me because Microsoft recently, about half a year ago, Microsoft had someone from the GDAP team join our Discord server and explain GDAP to us, like as a public service thing. There's actually only a list of 55 supported roles for GDAP. Yes, the list shows all 88 because there are 88 Microsoft privileged roles, or 89 these days. But there's only 50 supported for GDAP. So if you select all of them, you no longer get access anyway. So you're breaking it for yourself. So you have to be a lot more careful and think through your GDAP strategy a little. Out of those 55 roles, there's only 12 that you need to be close to a global administrator, but not have that far-reaching constant standing access. One of the really useful roles to add to a GDAP relationship is creating one with privileged role administrator, which allows you to create a new global admin in the tenant in case you do have a break glass event, or you do need far-reaching access, or you need to enter the user's data. Because one of the things that Microsoft said previously with DAP, you were able to access a user's data. Now with GDAP, Microsoft says, hey, that is no longer the case. You agree to never view that data. Otherwise, you become responsible for that data. And you don't want that either. As an MSP, you don't want to be responsible for all the data that your clients are generating. So they remove some of that access, which means you need a just-in-time administrator. So using the privileged role administrator account allows you to create a new global administrator in the tenant and temporarily gain access using any GIT tool.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of those little nuggets and caveats that you learn, after going through it some over time.
Exactly.
And it's changed, obviously, in the past years. We've seen different roles added, but also a mix up there. The other common thing that I see personally is also, just when you said strategy, it kind of triggered this as well, too, in the sense of, I've got my existing technicians tier 1 through tier 3, and they may need certain levels of access into the client. How can I maximize, the security benefits of GDAP while also making sure that we align, those roles to those permissions and thinking about that? So I don't know if you could speak to, some of the strategies that you would recommend, for that kind of the common distribution that we'd see, but also just, how people are aligning their own internal processes around GDAP.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done at my MSP was decreasing access for everyone. Not just for tier 1s. We said, you know what? We're going to see how much stuff everyone bumps into when everyone is just a user administrator. Nothing else. When you can just reset passwords, create users, and remove users. That's it. That's the only permission you had, or help desk administrator, I believe the role was.
That's called the screen test in my world.
Exactly. And we were just checking, okay, what couldn't you do? And then people, instead of coming to you with, I can't do anything, we removed the permissions for everyone, including very advanced engineers. And they said, I need the ability to do X. And instead of saying nothing works, they actually came to us. We need the ability to do X or Y or Z. And having a list of we need the ability to do this allows you to much easier select the roles that you actually need and to assign them to the right people in your organization. You eventually are able to create a more functional role there, saying like, okay, hey, all of our tier 3s have said they need access to this. So our tier 3 role is this, our tier 2 role is this, and our tier 1 role is just help desk administrator. It's a smoke test, exactly as Bob Miller just said in test. It works best to define your own strategy because everyone at every MSP will have a slightly different approach to doing things. And when you are a solo shop, when you are a owner operator, I understand that this is not something you want to be dealing with. I understand that this is not something you want to think about. My personal suggestion would be to use the 15 recommended roles that Cyberdrain has in their documentation, but don't always have them assigned. Make sure that you only assign the couple that you need daily, and then when you do notice, oh, I need some elevation, add that role using something like privileged identity management.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because we leverage that at our MSP for just-in-time access into a security group that could then access those permissions as part of the GDAP relationship. And that worked really well because we also reduced our attack surface even further by saying, hey, even our tier 1 technicians could pin in to their group to start their day, and they had 8 hours, in that role. But when they went home on the weekends, on holidays, they didn't actually have any access into our customer tenants. So that worked out really well in that scenario. When I was working at IMSP, we, had come out with GDAP, and I went this bazooka ant approach of creating this whole PowerShell script to audit all the audit logs of every single, service we accessed, through GDAP or through DAP at that point, roles, and created this whole Power BI report for it. But what I've concluded was it was no better than doing what you had just mentioned there, which was, going through a smoke test,
yeah, exactly,
goals, and then just trying to test that out and seeing how far we could get. Obviously, get to create some friction, right off the bat, but we were able to place into those 3 buckets that level of distribution, which worked out well for us too. So, on that note, though, to the point of Microsoft changing things, that's a classic, things always going to happen. There's going to come out with new APIs, as more than most, around the different things that you can do, but also just new delegated admin roles, especially for thinking about this multi-tenancy. How do you maintain GDAP consistency, through all those changes, and what's your change process kind of look like behind that?
You don't. You don't keep consistency. So Microsoft has promised that there would be a method to add a role to a GDAP relationship if they decide to add one later without breaking the contract relationship. And of course, Microsoft's compliance team said, hell no, that ain't happening. So you don't. You have to request a new relationship. And currently what my internal strategy is, and this is also what I recommend people using Cyberdrain or CIPP in general to do, is create one relationship that contains all of your roles so you don't get an unmaintainable mess of things that auto-extend at different times. You just have one relationship, you end the old one, and clients do receive an email about that. When you do that. So make sure that your client is notified and understand why you're making this change. Be like, we need a little bit more access because Microsoft added a new product, and you just go from there. That is my current strategy. It's a bit nuke and pave it. That sometimes is the easiest solution, especially if you want to keep having maintainable environments.
Yeah, makes sense.
Awesome.
Well, I think as we're winding down on time, we also wanted to talk certainly about the new CIPP certification. So I want to turn it back over to Brian, start asking some questions about that too.
Yeah, we've mentioned CIPP a couple times, Kelvin. And for those of you out there that may not know what CIPP is, could we get everyone on the proverbial Gary Pica fairway here and share the number? Kelvin, could you share the number of MSPs using it? And I guess there's big news a few days ago with drift management being added in your latest release. So we'd love to share a little bit more about the latest version.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's about 9,000 MSPs using CIPP now, managing somewhere in the 2.6 to 7 million tenants. That's a lot of them. It's I realize how much that is. CIPP started with like 100 users and it exploded into all of this. It's absolutely crazy. We recently released, every 2 weeks, we try to make a new release of CIPP. And one of the things that we always want to focus on is following our community. What are they requesting? And one of the requests was you could always apply specific standards to a tenant using CIPP. And that meant set it and forget it. It applies, and there are policies created or security settings change or all these kind of stuff. But a request from our community was a lot more around, hey, but how do we handle tenants that already have some existing policies, like a conditional access policy that does the same thing as the one we just deployed, or a Intune policy that changes a setting that we just set to on and they change it to off? How do we handle these kind of things? So we created the drift management update, which allows you to actually see what a tenant is compared to the defined state you made. So you make a defined state with all the security settings and all the Intune policies you want. And we compare the actual tenant to that and say like, oh, wait, you're having 5 extra policies in this tenant, or 2 extra conditional access policies, or you have an extra exclusion in conditional access in this tenant. And users can say, we accept this deviation, or we deny this deviation, throw away that policies. So they're able to manage that a lot better.
Kelvin, just to clarify, Brian, you started this to solve your own problem at Lime. Is that
Yeah, absolutely. I was this was 100% spy-driven development. I've spoken about that story before on the cyber call. I was annoyed that no one in the market was doing this yet. I was aggravated, and because of that, I created this community around creating a piece of multi-tenant management software. Because about 4 years ago, when we started this, there was no one that did this, or it was unaffordable at like $1,000 a tenant. There were insane prices at that point in time.
Go ahead, Brian. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. But Kelvin, man, when you talk about or configuration management, drift management, as a compliance and audit nerd like I am, I just that to me gets my nerdy senses excited, right? Because that's one of the difficult things to measure. Is hey, we have these baseline configurations. How do we know when those change? And if you look at CMMC and others out there, that's become a really big deal, is managing that drift from the baseline to where they're at today.
Yeah.
So I see Lighthouse got mentioned in the chat. So let's talk about that for a second, Kelvin. So why do you feel Microsoft hasn't gotten it, with Lighthouse and other multi-tenancy, right? I mean, on one hand, it's created this entire ecosystem of MSP solutions like SaaS Alerts and others. Do you think MSPs will eventually want to make a mark in these threat management areas around Microsoft 365?
I have a very simple answer for that, and it is because it is 100% financially driven. Microsoft released their annual report last year, and MSPs, ISVs, and CSPs combined were 2% of their revenue. We are just too small for them to care about. They can't invest money into us. They can't invest teams into us because we're a margin error at times. And of course, if you look at the entire SMB market, that's much bigger. That's much more important to them. But Microsoft would much rather focus on capturing that part of the market than focus on giving MSPs extra tools, simply because they don't see a return on investment long term. And 2%, of course, is an enormous amount of money. Don't forget that Microsoft is one of the biggest companies in the world. It's an obscene amount of money. But
yeah, it's a rounding error. There, 2% when you're talking about the law of big numbers like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Crazy. So let's throw the last two over to you.
Yeah. So Kelvin, I want to unpack and certainly would love to hear more about your new certification. So what is it? How do you get started? And then I know you're collaborating with Andrew to have a boot camp at the next Ride of Boom. So I'd love to hear what advantages they'll have over others using the platform by going to that boot camp.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Rite of Boom, the coming Rite of Boom next year, we're going to have the very first Cyber Dream Bootcamp, or the CIPP Bootcamp, and this is really exciting for me because this is a thing I'm super passionate about. I've been speaking to Andrew about this for a while. It is an educational event for everyone at Rite of Boom to learn how to use CIPP. It's not just a one-time you sit down in a chair, you learn something, and you're done. No, we're actually going to take you around the CIPP security expert journey. It's you're actually earning a credential, not just a, oh, I sat in a session for 2 hours and now I can show a little certificate. No, it's going to be something worthwhile for yourself. It's going to be something that your engineers will walk away with the feeling that they are now completely in control of their CIPP environment and know more about M365. Not just that they know more about CIPP, but that they actually understand why CIPP is doing these changes. It's going to be a entire skill journey we take you on. And it's not just going to be, oh, hey, you know what? Come over and you get CIPP certified. We are putting our money where our mouth is and saying everyone that joins also gets a Microsoft certification voucher. Everyone that comes over and joins the session gets a Microsoft certification voucher to continue your learning journey. It's a very first for us. We've given educational events around M365 before, but Rite of Boom is going to be the place to get your first CIPP credential, your first step of getting your CIPP credential.
Okay. Quick interruption there, Nick. There's been a few comments about CMMC and GCC High. So let me leave the GCC High out, but the last one coming from Eric Monroe, CIPP compliance for someone that's CMMC level 2, Kelvin. What can they do? Possible, impossible?
Possible. I spoke to a friend of mine about this, that there are some complexity involved. You'll have to self-host. You have to be in control of some IAM stuff, as far as I understand. But yes, absolutely possible. GCC High, unfortunately not, because GCC High does not have all Graph APIs available. Actually, it pretty much has no Graph APIs available. It's absolutely terrible. It's Microsoft has decided to shut off for like 70% of the APIs.
That's crazy. All right, Nick, I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, I think one thing we'll pocket from Rob here too is where do we sign up? So maybe.
Yeah. Rob, it's going to be, so we're just doing some final testing on all the folks that pre-registered last year. We're going to run them through the gauntlet to make sure the registration system is set. But one of the and so probably in the next week to 2 weeks, we'll have a huge announcement about it. One of the big thematics, and again, with Bob Miller out there and Eric Monroe also on advisory council, we've talked to over 100. I did 100 post-event interviews of attendees, and what you're going to see at Rite of Boom this year, focusing on two personas, executive personas and technical personas. Executive personas, you'll have folks like Brian Blakely, who's here doing things around vCISO, doing things around compliance, patch management, things of that nature, and go to market. And then there are going to be other certifications that are things like Kelvin's. We're going to actually bring in the folks from Microsoft. There's going to be a plethora, I like that word, Nick, of different types of CPE training. It's going to be much more geared to being able to tell your company, or as the owner investing in conferences, we're walking away with these certifications, these CPE credits, etc. In terms of, I think the last question is a really good one, though, for Kelvin to close us out, Nick.
Yeah, super excited about that certification too. Just wanted to comment on that, just given, a lot of the standards we can push out in CIPP, a lot of the things we can do can also cause friction, for end users. And so educating your technicians on why we're doing this, we can communicate it even better to the clients, is also a huge, huge deal. So very excited about that. But yeah, as we're winding down here, Kelvin, if you could leave MSPs with a few nuggets of wisdom when it comes to managing Microsoft 365 at scale, maybe some of the things that they commonly miss or get overlooked, where would you tell them to focus?
I could be like very gross salesy and be like, "Oh, use CIPP now" and that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say use Cloud Capsule. Seriously, it's amazing. Go check it out if you haven't. Nick has done an amazing job at creating something that allows you to get a bit of insight into how your tenants, what their current state is. The nuggets of wisdom I want to leave everyone with as an MSP is that this multi-tenant management can be done in a lot of ways. You can be wasting a lot of time with something like your PowerShell scripts and all this kind of stuff, but make sure that you are at least covering the basics. Make sure that you are disabling guest access. Make sure that you're or disabling guests over time. Make sure that you disable guest access to the directory. Make sure you configure your conditional access policies. These are all fairly entry level things that we sometimes slip up and forget. And I think last year, Andrew and I did a cyber call, where we had 5 recommendations. I'll make sure to send that image again inside of the CyberDrain Discord, and I'll send it to Andrew too, so you can share it with everyone. But it's just 5 recommendations that make your tenants so much more secure immediately. So that's the thing I'd want to leave you with.
Awesome. So first off, wow, packed house. I think we peaked at about 205, Kelvin. So you definitely packed the house today. So thank you for coming. Nick, you probably helped with that as well as you, Brian. So to the audience, thanks as always for all your support. This will be out probably this evening in podcast. Same URL if you want to rewatch it, share it to team members. Exact same URL will be available out on YouTube. We'll convert it, as I said, to podcast. That'll be out to all your major, friendly podcast platforms as well. So, Kelvin, thanks a million for joining us as always. Nick, awesome job filling in for a first time as a co-host. So we'll have you back as well. And Brian, great job on the other side here, not being in the hot seat.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
You'll be doing a lot more of that. I can assure you. So, wishing everybody a fantastic week, y'all. Take care, and we'll see you all very, very soon.